Attention. Due to the nature of the films discussed, the Civil Gore podcast may contain adult language and themes.
Hey guys, welcome to Civil Gore, a special Minisode.
Yes, sorry it's so soon. We know we said we're going to get back to the regular episodes, but I'll let Tim explain about the week he had here.
Yeah, so I had kind of a bad week with some of my home repair issues, and then it was topped off with a citywide internet outage on the night that we were supposed to record our podcast. And even though it came back up, we had already decided to just call it off because we didn't think it was going to be back up in time. So schedules got a little crazy, so we decided to do a mini-sode and push our full episode to next week. But also, Brian, I had heard that one of our guests for next week had some kind of an issue or something.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought they would be fine with it, but they actually left me a weird voicemail. So I sent it to you. So I don't know if you see it on your thing, but you might want to play that.
Yeah, let's go ahead and play it and see what's going on.
You all know me, know how I earn a living. I'll be on this episode for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. Big movie. Not like reviewing some 80s piece of crap like Blood Diner or Night Warning. This movie, you gotta do it right. Little half-assing, little mistake making, and down you go. And we gotta do it quick. That'll bring back your listeners. Put your Kickstarters back on a paying basis. It's not going to be pleasant. I value my podcasting skills a lot more than $3,000, Chief. You can promote me for $3, but I'll be on the show and talk to you for $10. But you got to make up your minds. If you want this podcast to stay alive, then ante up. If you want to play it cheap, have fun with just your mamas listening. I don't want no volunteers. I don't want no guests. There's too many hosts on this show. $10,000 for me by myself. For that, you get the first chop, the deep cut, the whole damn thing.
Wow. Okay. He sounded kind of irritated.
Yeah, I hope he still comes the next week though, because I think we need him for the movie we're discussing.
Yeah, it's going to cost us though.
That's true. Well, we may have to start doing maybe like we'll do what our good friends at Costa Radio do with Amazon. Maybe we'll do that with Shudder.
Yeah,
we'll reach out to them.
Hey, Shudder, we need you.
Yeah,
our guest prices have gone up.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Because it's a mini-sode, we're not doing a first chop this week, but we will run through the Blu-ray releases and theatrical releases, so you're not behind on those. So we have Blu-ray releases for June 27th, and this is a pretty good week, I'd say.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a couple there that I was really waiting for because I did not get to catch them in the theater, so this is gonna be cool.
Right. So the first one this one I really, really want to see because it stars Donald Pleasance from Halloween.
Right. So how can you go wrong there?
Yeah, I mean, well, of Halloween fame, he was famous long before Halloween.
Right.
Great actor. But this one's called Deathline, and you'll also see it listed as Raw Meat. It's from 1972, and it's about some subhuman people living in the London Underground, which sounds really cool to me.
Yeah, I like that.
There's subhuman people living in the London Underground.
And if one of them's Michael and he just gets to yell, Michael! That would just make that movie for me.
Oh, we're just full of bad
impressions. Yeah. And the best is yet to come. No.
Yeah. Just hold on to your seats.
Yeah.
There's more coming. The Unholy from 1988. One of the other horror podcasts I listen to, Shockwaves, which you'll hear me reference all the time because it's
great podcast.
One of my favorites. They were actually talking about this movie on one of the more recent episodes, and they're talking about how boring it was.
Oh, no.
So, that's not good.
It's funny, too, when I looked at the rundown here, I read it quickly. You know how you sometimes read sentences and just the group the words at once? So I looked at it, and I guess I did not notice a dash, so I thought it said a priest battles a demon, Hal Holbrook.
That would probably be better than this movie.
Right? Like maybe he was just angry that day and when he had him on set and he became a demon. I don't know. Shows I should read carefully.
Yeah, this was one of those Exorcist knockoff type thing, or not an Exorcist knockoff, but a demon possession movie, which were all the rage around that time.
Right, yeah.
The Autopsy of Jane Doe is getting a release. I believe that was a Walmart exclusive, so this marks the date in which it's no longer a Walmart exclusive, so it goes into wide release.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great movie. So I'll probably be picking that one up.
Yeah, that's the one I want to see, and as well as the next one you're about to get to.
Yeah. So the next one is the Belko Experiment, which was in theaters not too long ago, and I really want to see that one as well.
Yeah, it looks like the it's like if you took the show The Office and just made it really, really dark.
Yeah, it didn't stay long in the theater, which is why I never got a chance to see it, at least around in my area. So I just missed out. I think it was only in the theater for 2 or 3
Yeah,
weeks.
it was the same here. And I remember when I think the weekend it came out was the weekend I had seen Get Out in the theaters. So I remember it was still playing at the same time. And, I was said, oh, we got to come back. I didn't realize this is out. We got to come see this. And it just, by next week, it was gone. So.
Right. Next up, we have Victims from 1985. This looks like a really bad Friday the 13th knockoff. The summary is 4 young girls stalked by a serial killer in the woods. So it's not only a Friday the 13th knockoff, the body count is really low.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's only 4 of them. That's not good.
We have more in the game we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, that'll be good.
This one looks really good. 1959, The 4 Skulls of Jonathan Drake. And I read the summary, and I just boiled it down to missing heads, Indian curses. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I was going to say that you've sold me on those 4 words. So I'm in.
And then we have a couple of really oddball, these look more like those little sexploitation horror films, at least judging by the covers. We have Nurse Sherry from 1978, a killer nurse possessed by an evil spirit.
Okay.
Or maybe it's just a regular nurse possessed by an evil spirit, which makes her a killer.
Right, yeah. She may have been a nice nurse going in,
And then we have The Evictors from 1979. And this one I was trying to wrap my head around the summary, but it was something about these newlyweds move into a new house in Louisiana. Or not a new house, but a new for them house.
Yeah.
They rent this house in Louisiana with a strange past, and they're untrusted by the townsfolk.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when horror movies will take something that's, like kind of it's like a job or a task and turn it into horror. Like I mean, there was some good ones like The Dentist, but like this one, The Evictors. That's like having like The Garbage Man or or the Accountant. It's like, well, actually, there was an Accountant with Ben Affleck, I think, right? But I don't think that was that obviously was not a horror.
That was unintentionally horror movie.
Right? Yeah, but that just makes me laugh when you take something that's probably not so scary. I mean, yeah, sure, it's traumatized. You're getting evicted, but.
Oh, and they're running out of careers at this point.
Really. I mean, who knows what's next, they've gone to everything. But I know there's another Kickstarter for us in there somewhere if we think hard enough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the grocery bagger.
Oh, yes, that's right. It'll say, like, what could it say? It could be, like, 10 items or less, or 10 no, wait, that's bad. I got to think of a good one, though. There's a good tagline in there somewhere,
Paper, plastic, or body bag.
Oh my God, that's perfect. You nailed it. Okay, we got it.
There you go. I used to be a grocery store bagger, so
you thought long and hard of this.
Yeah.
On this, it's a little nerve wracking. Did all your customers make it to their car, Tim? I know.
I'll never tell.
Oh, I like that idea. That actually could be a real. All right, that's a Kickstarter. We gotta trademark that one. I like that.
Yeah, the bagger.
Yeah, the bagger. Nice.
Okay, so for theatrical releases for June 23rd, we have Blood Feast. So, you guys that are loyal listeners know that we covered a movie called Blood Diner, which was a loose remake, more of a comedic remake of the original Blood Feast. And this is more of a serious remake of the original Blood Feast.
So no Anwar, I'm sure.
So no Anwar, but probably no talking mannequins in the diner or whatever. But I really kind of want to see this one because... I do
too. And how did this escape our radar? I mean, I
don't know. When I saw it, I thought, oh, it's another movie called Blood Feast. And then I started researching it, and it was like, oh, this actually is Blood Feast remake.
That can't be getting a full theatrical release, right? That's got to be in like the art cinemas or something, or the whatever.
Yeah, both of these releases this week, I believe, are just limited.
Yeah, although I am gonna look and see because I mean I am close to obviously Manhattan, and they get everything. I mean, at some point, So
Yeah. And then the other one, man, this one was weird. It's called Fire Angels: A Drifter's Fury. And I was reading the summary of this one, and I was like, I just have WTF question mark on the rundown.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking as I'm reading what you wrote.
And it says, an African American adopted by a Japanese mechanic moves to America where he is tricked by the devil and must deliver the fire of God.
That's oddly specific, like descriptions of the people in it.
I was thinking, does their race matter?
Yeah, why is that
integral
part?
to the story?
Does it matter? They're delivering the fire of God. I think that should be the main, like, focus on this thing. Wow.
So yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. I have no clue. I'm just reading what I saw.
Yeah, that's a doozy. I'll tell you. Yet it is something I want to find out more about. I think to see what the heck they're going to do with this plot. But yeah, I'm not going to go expend too much effort for it though.
No,
just enough.
No.
Just enough.
So we decided to do an episode on Friday the 13th, the game. As I had mentioned last episode, I was thinking of buying it. I was going to wait for some server problems to get ironed out, and then I was like, no, my willpower is way too weak.
Yeah, I didn't help either.
No, Brian didn't help because he's telling me how much fun he's having.
Yeah.
So I also bought the Xbox One version, which is apparently the crappiest version.
Apparently, but but for us it serves a purpose because we have a couple of friends that join us, so we usually have the 5 of us playing, and sometimes it's just the 5 of us in the room in the game, and I haven't had this much fun playing a video game, like, in a group video game since like the early days of when Call of Duties first came out and those kind of first multiplayer games, because I kind of gave my impersonation. I'll let Tim take the floor here for a little bit to tell him his first impressions of it. But yeah, this game, when it works, like I said, it's it still has a little server issues every now and then. We've got booted and had trouble with parties, but when this works, I tell you, you have so much fun. But like I said, I'm going to let Tim give his first impressions now, as you heard mine last week. So take it away, Tim.
All right. So let me preface this by saying this game is not for everybody. When I first played it, I had a lot of fun, but I could definitely see a lot of the issues. And part of that was just my lack of understanding of the strategy and tactics, which we'll get into later. But this game really rewards having a good party of friends to play with. I think if you were just going to just randomly jump in and out of games with strangers, you're probably not going to have as good a time, because the counselors in the game really require teamwork to succeed against Jason.
Yeah.
The matches are heavily stacked towards Jason, and I could see people that were just jumping into these games and they don't have any real good way to communicate, and they don't have good coordination, and they're playing with people that don't really know the strategies. It's going to be frustrating because you're probably going to get killed 99% of the time, unless you just happen to get lucky and be in the right place at the right time. So I preface my review by saying I can understand it's not for everybody, and some people just don't have patience for the server issues, which is fine. If you're paying for a complete game and you're not getting a complete game because you're having server crashes and that kind of stuff, that's totally your right to not want to engage in that or whatever. Now, for me, I'm such a big horror fan and a big Friday the 13th fan that I'm willing to overlook the game's issues and occasional crashes and matchmaking issues, because like Brian said, when the game works, it's so much fun.
Oh yeah, it really is.
Now, Brian, did you play the original Nintendo Friday the 13th game?
Yes, way more than I probably should have.
Yeah. Well, I was sitting there thinking, if you guys may have seen on our site, we posted a link where the developers are going to patch in a retro purple suited Jason that comes from the Nintendo game, obviously. Even has a chiptune soundtrack with him. But it got me thinking about the original Nintendo game, and I was like, oh my gosh, this actually is sort of like a remake of that game, because if you remember, all the there's some parts in the Nintendo game where you were like running through a cave and shooting zombies and stuff. I'm not talking about that part.
Yeah, that made no sense.
Like, that made no sense. But the cabin part where you're like going through cabins and searching for items and hoping Jason doesn't just pop up out of nowhere, that part is actually very similar to what this game is.
It is. It looked like they took the core idea of, obviously, okay, you're at a camp, you're going to be going through the cabin, but they did it. They took that basic premise and did it and modernized it the best they could to, I guess, use that Unreal Engine or Unreal 4 engine, whatever, and went with it.
So that's another caveat I wanted to put out there, because on the surface, the game is very linear. As a counselor, you've got to search cabins, find the parts to a car or a boat or a telephone so that you can call the police. And that's basically what you're doing. Avoid Jason, find the items, put them together, get out. And as Jason, you're just killing counselors and preventing them from escaping. So from a surface level, the game is pretty simple. You don't have all the strategic options you're going to get from a Call of Duty or a Titanfall or something like that. And I can see where that can turn people off. There's also a pretty good amount of downtime in the game. Because when you're killed, you have no choice but to sit there and spectate the match until everybody's either dead or escaped or whatever.
Unless you get the Tommy character, which we'll get to a little later, yeah.
Right. And these matches are 20 minutes, which is insanely long time for a multiplayer game.
Right.
Or a multiplayer match, especially for those that are used to Call of Duty and games like that. So if you happen to get unlucky and get killed right out of the gate, you could legitimately be sitting there for 15 plus minutes watching other people play.
However, that can be fun because you can switch cameras, so you can kind of watch and you can kind of see what trouble they're kind of walking into. And as Tim, I'm sure, will touch on, as our friend Steve, who seems to kind of get himself into all sorts of trouble every time.
Right. Now, there again, the reason I put that as a caveat is because as a horror fan, I love the spectator mode. I don't mind watching other people play because, like Brian said, it's like watching a horror movie. You're watching these people get stalked by Jason. You're watching them do cool stuff to stun him or get out of his clutches. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. If you're not as big a fan of the franchise or you're just antsy and don't like the downtime, I could see where that could be a little frustrating. But that's all my negatives. I wanted to get all those out of the way first because, like I said, the game is a total blast, especially if you can get some friends in a party, all get on the same chat and coordinate your efforts and strategize. And that leads us into our tip section because I decided to put a rundown of all the tips I had learned over the last few nights of playing that I didn't know when I first started playing and will greatly enhance your enjoyment of the game. Now, I am by no means an expert in this game whatsoever. I've only had it less than a week.
Although you picked it up pretty fast, I have to say. Much more. I thought we could get a couple of games in where you would just be running around, not sure what to do. But you figured out some stuff right off the bat that was pretty good. Including, I will say this, that Tim was. Who we always joke about on the show, who's not a true fan of the jump scare. He managed to give me a jump scare in one of the games we were playing where he, because just to show you, Jason can, when he goes in the water, he can swim at almost like light speed. He looks like that. I always compare it to that scene in Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire where Victor Crumb dives in the thing and he's like a shark and he goes whoosh, and he goes in like a torpedo kind of thing. That's what Jason is like in the water. So Tim must have seen me across the lake there. He got in the water. Next thing I know, he literally jumped out of the lake, scared the hell out of me, and proceeded to kill me. So yeah, so it's that's the thing about this game. I will say, you can get some true jump scares. In fact, half the time it's scarier than any of the actual Friday the 13th films, because there are times when Jason, you just literally see him running up to the cabin you're in, and you realize there's no way out, and you're like, oh my god, what do I do? And there is that, and there's abilities that Jason has that the counselors don't have, where you can literally, he could just appear behind you in seconds, and it gives you that that kind of excitement to it. So yeah, while there is a lot of downtime sometimes when you're just looking through cabins and stuff, you never know what'll happen. But
yeah, you always feel scared,
yeah,
as a counselor because you're so underpowered compared to Jason.
Right.
But let's get into the tips, and because I'm sure that'll generate some discussion. And Brian, if you want to, we could just kind of tag team these back and forth.
Yeah, we'll alternate. That's good. Good idea.
So the first one I had is a strategy that our group came up with pretty quickly, and that is that when we search a cabin, we immediately go into the cabin, fortify the doors, which all the doors have some kind of fortify function, either putting a bar across them or locking them, and that keeps Jason out. Jason can't just open a locked door. He has to bust through it, and that takes a considerable amount of time for him.
Right. Usually, he starts unless in the I think the last few minutes when Jason is in his rage mode, where he could just literally like walk through doors and smash them. He's got most of the time. I mean, I think the glass one, certain ones, he could just in a couple of hacks with his axe or whatever weapon he has. Most of the time, I think it takes 3 or 4 or sometimes even 5 good hacks at the door to get in, and by that time you could easily get around the cabin, go out a back door, go out a window. So yeah, the fortify the door, that was, I think Steve had come up with that, right? I mean, he was saying that to do that, and it also it really helps you because in this game every second really counts to get a head start.
And then when you're in the cabin, you're looking through drawers, looking for car keys, looking for a map, looking for a walkie-talkie.
Which you always find that for some reason.
Yeah, looking for weapons. So what we decided to do is, as we went into a cabin, we'd fortify the door. We would also leave every drawer open as we searched it. And that way, if we ever come back to that cabin, we know, we see the doors locked, we see the drawers are open, we know not to mess with that cabin anymore.
Right.
Because it's essential. You're going to have to search just about every cabin to find all the items you need to repair the car or repair the boat or call the police. So it's imperative that you're not wasting time searching a cabin that's already been searched.
Right, and because Jason can morph to the cabin, so you really want to kind of be in and out of there as fast as possible and constantly be on the move if it's at all possible. Because, I mean, yeah, there's a crouch and there's some hide functions, but as with Jason's abilities where he has the sense button, where you can sense it and you basically highlight as a little red dot, a red highlight of you on the screen, or the whole cabin will light up red. You always want to keep moving. So yeah, and especially when you're in a group, you basically every man for themselves will not work in this game. It just doesn't.
That leads right to our next tip, right?
Right. So at sometimes, believe it or not, this is harder than it sounds. But as soon as you kind of bump into someone that you know in the game, and someone finds that map, you should always stick together. No one's traveling alone, because it's great. Because especially, you can protect. You can have one guy kind of on watch while the other person's checking the cabin. And also, if that person happens to have the first aid, you can actually spray your fellow counselors too if they need it. So you always kind of want to, if possible, stay with 2, because Jason, I mean, as fast and as powerful as he is, he can't get 2 people at once. So that's a huge key. And also, a big factor of that is if you do find stuff like for the cars or the boats, there's like these little mini games that sometimes can take like a good 35 seconds to 40 seconds to do, and you're kind of prone in that position. So Jason comes up on you, you're pretty much caught in that mini game, you're dead. So it's good to have someone kind of watching your back.
Right. Speaking of the mini games, so in every level there's always a car and a boat, or 2 cars, or some combination thereof. Sometimes there's not a boat, sometimes there's only 1 car, whatever. But you're always going to have a car option, a boat option, and a telephone option to call the police. And all of those requires parts to repair. And like Brian said, it causes you to do a mini game to apply these parts and repair the car or whatever. But particularly on maps with 2 cars, always keep an eye on what objectives have been completed. You can hit the select button and pull up a list of all the objectives, and it'll show you what's been done already. And this is especially important when you're playing with other people you don't know.
Right.
Because they may have already put gas in the car, and you're wasting your time running around looking for gas that doesn't exist.
Right, and remember, if you don't have that map, you have like such a small section of this camp with stuff's not marked really yet. So it's hard to find. And sometimes you literally have to walk like a good 3 minutes in real time to get across to the other car. So if and like I said, when you're holding a gas tank, gas tank, you don't have a weapon in your hand, so you're basically running without a weapon.
Right. Yeah, you're completely vulnerable. So make sure you know which car to put gas in, and you're not putting gas in one car and the battery's in the other car, and now you've wasted it because you've got 2 cars that are half complete when you could have had 1 complete car.
Right.
And then the other thing I had put in the notes was if the boat only requires a propeller and gas. Whereas the car requires a battery, gas, and car keys. So it's easier to complete the boat on those maps. So make sure when you're looking at your objectives, if it's easier to complete the boat, maybe that's the better option.
Yeah, that car sometimes is hard to get all 3 pieces together.
Right, yeah. So it's a game of prioritizing as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, because the longer you walk around not accomplishing something, the more chance Jason's just going to grab you.
Right, and so the next one actually kind of, it's good the way you did this order. They kind of all kind of blend into each other a little bit. So basically, one of the common things you'll see, and I've used this tactic many a times. I can't use it as much with you guys when we play because you guys know this pretty well. But when I play games with some other people that I don't know, just random games I go into, they don't know this all yet. But you'll see Jason you can camp him out near a vehicle, especially when it's when it's only got one thing, because people are going to head to it. So you can usually just easily kind of stand in the woods as Jason and kind of, and you warp back and forth between the 2 cars and stuff. And you kind of keep an eye out because they're eventually going to come back there. And the best thing to do is kind of wait until till the guy goes out or the counselor goes out to do the mini game, and you just walk out as Jason. You can pretty much have a good easy kill, especially if they did not use our great strategy of going in teams, which I notice a lot of people, the random games I go into, do not use that strategy.
No,
and they're all scattered, and it's usually at some level it makes it harder as Jason to kill everybody because they're all over the place, but you can usually get a decent amount of kills because they're not working together.
Right. And so, to Brian's point, if you're playing as a counselor and Jason is camping one of those cars, don't waste your time on it, because the clock is your friend in this game.
Yes.
When the clock runs out and you're still alive, you get the victory. So you essentially escape by default. If Jason's going to sit there and camp one car, then go find an alternate route. There's always another way to escape. Right. There's never just one way to win the game. So let him camp, let him sit there all night if he wants to, because that's time that he's not stalking you.
Right. Yeah, and when I'm Jason, I tend to bounce all around. Like, I'll go between the 2 cars back and forth every so often, just because it's that it's usually a common point. And usually they put the cars kind of near one of the main cabins anyway. So going back and forth there, you kind of want to avoid those cars, actually, kind of like a little add-on. You want to avoid the cars when you don't need to be there, because it's going to be a main spot for counselors going. Everyone's going to try and go to that car, especially if you get some newbies in the game. They're going to go right over to there, and they'll look around like as if... Yeah, and I've actually seen playing a game where one of the times I think the person went in, and I just saw them keep trying to open the car without any of the things in it, not understanding that you needed the pieces to it. So that was an easy kill.
Yeah. The next tip I had on here is about perks. So counselors have 3, or is it 4? 4 perk slots.
Yes.
And those perks always offer a benefit and a negative. So on the benefit side, it could be something like, you have reduced fear, or you can escape from Jason easier, or you can drive the car faster. And then it will also have a negative side, which is, okay, maybe you can drive the car faster, but it takes you longer to fill it up with gas or whatever. Just as an example. And what the developers made it a little easier for you to decide which perks are valuable by color coding them. So there are like poor and common perks that don't really give you it might be like a 1 or 2% advantage. In the case of poor perks, usually the negatives vastly outweigh the positives.
Right. But they cost you money, so that's why, if you don't have anything better, don't feel like, I got nothing, but use what you have. But however, you can sell them back, which is good.
Right. So I typically, and everybody's got their own strategy, I typically just sell all my poor and common perks.
That's what I do too. Yeah.
Because typically I've got enough of the other kind to fill my slots up. So in addition to the poor and common, you also have an uncommon, a rare, and an epic. Obviously, they get better and better as you go up that scale.
I haven't got the epic yet. I think Steve got one. I don't know if you got one.
I do have one epic.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah.
I have a couple of rares, but I don't have an epic.
And just to backtrack a little bit on how perks work, basically they cost 500 CP, which is the currency of the game, which you get by playing matches. But for every 500 CP you spend, you can randomly roll a new perk. And so you don't know what you're going to get. It could be any kind of perk, and it could be any level of perk. So you're kind of taking a chance every time you gamble that 500 CP, which makes it important that you ditch and sell the ones that are no good anymore and keep the ones that are good. And make sure to assign them to your counselors and make sure they stay assigned, because a lot of people just roll in with the default and don't realize that there's these perks that can make a huge difference in the game that they're not applying.
Right, and especially you want to almost like, you kind of can double up because each counselor has their own abilities to begin with. Like this is one, like the chubby guy we always laugh at, we call him Coaster Boy because he kind of looks like that Coaster Boy guy character. But what's funny is like he's got really good repair abilities already. So if you get a perk that improves that, you know, he's a good piece to have if, you know, because especially if you team up with guys, because you send him out there to repair the stuff while you guys get his back, and it's much quicker.
Right. Speaking of repair, man, I did put these in a good
Yeah, you
order.
did. Yeah, so you want to repair electrical boxes whenever possible, because basically the light reduces the fear, which reduces the stumbles and make it easier to evade Jason. So conversely, as Jason, you want to destroy the electrical boxes as fast as you can, because and I gotta tell you, the game is to the point where on a regular TV with the regular visual settings, when he knocks out the lights, it's kind of hard to see your way around the cabin. You don't see the doors as well. You don't see the things. And you do have a flashlight. Everyone is armed with a flashlight that you can turn on, but obviously you shine that flashlight, and I think they say Jason can't see it, but I know I was as Jason and I saw someone waving it around, so I don't know where I read that, but obviously that's wrong. So you don't want to keep the flashlight shining in a window flying out there if Jason's wandering around and his sensibilities doesn't have to charge yet. You basically like, hey, here I am.
Yeah.
And you're in the cabin and he can come after you. So yeah, so a lot of times if you're Jason, yeah, like basically you want to hack up every box you can find, and your electrical box, because it knocks out the power. And I don't think it can be repaired once he does something.
Yeah, if you find a fuse, you can
right.
repair
That's right. You need the fuse.
counselor.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
And I remember reading, and I don't know the exact details on this. I remember reading that you can't call Tommy Jarvis if the darkness level is at a certain amount or fear level or something. There's something that can prevent Tommy Jarvis from being called.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's another reason why you'll want to repair those whenever you can.
Right, yeah. I mean, not that Tommy's, he's not as powerful as you would think. I mean, other than he comes pre-armed, that's about his strength. He does nothing else for the game, if you think about it. He's pretty much like a regular counselor at that point.
Yeah, we'll talk about Tommy in a second, because he's another tip we got.
Yeah, that's true. He does have that one thing, but we'll get to that.
And then I put this one in there because it sounds somewhat silly, but I thought it was actually a decent tip, especially when you're playing with a bunch of strangers. And that's that your counselors have multiple clothes options. And maybe it might just be color of sweater or whatever. But most people don't bother to change those. They just go with the default. So what you'll have is multiple people that look exactly the same running around, playing the same counselor. So what I've decided to start doing is start changing that default outfit so that at least I'm recognizable. And especially in our group when we're playing, there's been times where we were confused as to which one of us we were looking at. Even though it shows your name above your head, from a distance you can't really, it might be hard to see that.
Right.
So if you choose some different clothes options, it just makes it quicker at a glance to identify each other.
Yeah, no, that it's definitely you're right though. It's like a something you wouldn't think to do because you just figure, okay, I'm a counselor, what's the difference? But it's funny. It's also assumed that the game would like automatically change your thing, but it doesn't.
Right.
So the next one we have is we kind of mentioned this with the counselors. Well, every Jason has its particular strengths and weaknesses also. Some can run, some can't. So I think the fastest one we figured out so far is the one from Jason from part 2 where he has the bag on his head. He can run because if you remember the movie, he ran. He's younger, a lot spry. Before he got
all rotted.
Right? Yeah, he was still kind of semi-normal at that point in movie terms, and so he runs fast. Part 3 Jason kind of run fast. However, Part 6 one walks as slow and just trudges along, and some of the counselors can run really fast, so that really pays off. But I think, I think that Jason from Part 6 has a really, really high sense. So he can
sense from a very long distance.
Right. So you can easily, and you can use his other abilities, his stalk ability, to get up close without them seeing you. So that kind of makes up for his fact that he runs. But you kind of got to be quick with him then, because once you get away and the counselor's running, if you haven't hit any damage to them and they're running at their full speed, they can pretty much get out of harm's way, and you'll have to go find them all over again.
Right. And we found out that there's always an introductory cutscene before each match, and it will show you which type of Jason is getting ready to spawn.
Right.
So if you learn to recognize the Jasons by sight, and you know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and take the time to learn those, then the minute the cutscene hits, you're going to know exactly what you're up against. And you can say, okay, well, I'm up against Part 6 Jason, so I can outrun him. Or if I'm up against Part 2 Jason, there's no way in hell I'm going to outrun him, so I better have some good weaponry.
Right. But he can't sense well, though. That's a good thing. He doesn't sense well at all. He can.
It kind of gets you. Well, it's because he's got one eye.
Right, that's true. And he's still young. He's fresh on the kills now.
But, I mean, unfortunately, you can't pick a counselor by that point because you've already made your decision.
Right.
So it's not like you could pick a counselor to combat those weaknesses or those strengths. But at least you have some kind of idea of what you're about to get into.
Right. Now, the good strategy, we didn't have this on here, but good thing to do possibly is you can, when you pick your preferences, you do random, you can preference as Jason or preference as counselor. If you guys go in a group of people that you know, you can each pick a counselor, get him ready for, so okay, you know what, as much as I hate when I get stuck with him, I get the chubby guy there. But, if I have him, then we'll make sure that, let's say, we have one of the faster counselors there. So he can run and maybe grab the stuff and bring it and drop it or something, and then you can pick it up and fix it. Stuff like that. Like, it really is about working together, which is why this, as Tim said, it's like, if you're not really in a group, it really changes the gameplay.
Yeah, I know we keep harping on it, but the teamwork is so important in this game because you have such an advantage over the people that are just running around willy-nilly by themselves. When you work together, not only are you safer against Jason because you can protect each other, but you're finding equipment faster, or parts faster, you're getting stuff repaired faster, you know where each other is, you know where Jason is. I mean, that stuff is huge, especially when, well, we got 5 people.
Yeah, we got a group of 5 that play.
Like a group of 5 in a party. There's going to be at max 3 random other people with us in the game. So we have just a huge advantage over Jason because he doesn't know that we're all working together.
Right. Unless one of us is Jason, which happens, which is kind of funny.
Which that does happen, but which makes communication a little difficult in party chat.
Yeah.
But
because a couple of times we've said, you almost forget that one of the people that could hear you is Jason will be like, oh no, wait, why'd you grab the battery from that cabin next to the tree? Or,
But I think our best matches have been when we were all counselors and some random person was Jason.
Right.
Because they didn't know what they were going up against when we were working together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is still fun, like I said, because, listen, if you can't, slaughter your friends in a video game, I mean, you can't have fun with that, then what are you having fun with, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we've taken this thing where our friend Steve Cohn got his jaw ripped off. He's got thrown out the window. He's got hung on a hook, and he's been given the swirly in the toilet bowl. And this has been our source of entertainment for days already.
I want a fireplace kill next.
Yes.
Cooking with Jason.
Yeah.
That's what my next goal for Cone.
Yeah, Cone, if you're listening, although you won't hear it, we're going to play you tonight, so you're not going to hear this. You'll look back and say, darn it, if only I knew.
One of the last tips I had on here was there's a cabin with a radio tower outside of it, and that's the cabin that has the radio to call Tommy Jarvis. So when you call him, what it will do, and you can call him anytime, but what will happen is at some point the game will randomly select one of the dead players who is spectating and spawn them back into the game as Tommy Jarvis. And Tommy, I'm assuming, has pretty good stats. I don't think he ever show his stats, but I'm assuming he has pretty good stats. But he also has a shotgun that is super powerful against Jason and will stun him for won't kill him unless you meet certain criteria. But he's just a very powerful character that can kind of come in at the last minute and kind of help players. And it also gives one person a chance to jump back into the game, so that's kind of cool.
Right, and the fact that he's like, I know I was kind of giving him a hard time on the character earlier, but it's just because we haven't had success with him. Because we'll get into, you kind of need as Tim said, you need a couple of criteria to really do damage. But he does come in pre-armed, which is good. And if you haven't found the shotgun yet, you do get a good blast on Jason with it. It's one. That's the problem. You get one. You can't reload, and once it's gone, that's it. So, you got to make it a good shot. So, it's like, and it's not like you really have, usually by the time you're ready to use it, you have about just enough time to aim and shoot. So you got to be good at it. So, I don't know what you need to do to practice, but yeah, you got to do that. And the thing is with, another thing with Tommy is you get a pretty cool cinematic scene when he comes in. It's kind of, you think the game's freezing because you're so used to it freezing, but it's actually him coming in a cool scene where he walks in and stuff. So that's kind of neat.
It was funny when the one time that I've spawned in as Tommy, I came into the game, I got my shotgun, and I see Jason in the distance, and I saw him hesitate, like, oh crap.
That's awesome.
He actually didn't come towards me. He sat there and kind of looked at like, which one of us is going to make the first move?
Yeah, well, too, because that shotgun actually is the only weapon in the game that has such a long distance. It really has a long distance to where you don't have to get too close to Jason. It's just usually he sneaks up on you 90% of the time. But like Tim said, like he probably could have shot him from that distance if he wanted to. It doesn't make sense because it's a lot harder to aim there. But that's the advantage, is that you kind of. He's the one character when you have that gun. I mean, now other characters can get the gun too. You find it randomly sometimes, but with Tommy, you kind of have that. You have the upper hand at moments, which is key that most of the other counselors don't have.
Yep.
So I guess the last one that I have, and this is kind of like a big Jason strategy that we've all kind of adapted. So when you lock yourself into the cabin, as we mentioned before, you've fortified it. The best way to get out, if Jason starts to hack in, is to go out the window.
Because Jason can't go through.
Right,
windows.
he can't. With all the things he can do,
game.
it's a key thing, and you have to use it to your advantage. So and most of the time, the best way to do is when he starts to hack the door, go to the furthest window, because there's a little. You can dive through the window, but I think it takes more stamina out of you, and sometimes if you're on the top floor, it could really injure you. But if you just go out the normal way, it's kind of a 3 or 4 second animation to climb out the window. So you want to go to the furthest window from the door as possible. Just run over there real quick and get out. But as another strategy, as Jason, what you want to do is Jason comes equipped already with 5 bear traps. And those bear traps are a pain in the butt. So what you could do is a lot of times, like especially it works, I think, better when you're down maybe to that final counselor or two. And they're kind of looking for stuff in the cabins. Set the bear traps out by the window and kind of start hacking in, because then when they go out the window, they're going to land right in the bear trap, and then you come run around and kill them. So I used
That's pretty devious.
Yeah, it is devious. But the thing is, you only have 5 of them, and if you do it too often, obviously, you don't want to do it when there's still a whole bunch of counselors out there. 1, it's time consuming. 2, you want to spread it around. So it's like I said, I usually try and save mine to the last 1 or 2 counselors out there. It's because half the time, and it happened accidentally. I discovered that strategy because I completely forgot that I had the bear traps. And I realized I had someone cornered, and I basically said, okay, well, they only can get out this window. So I set the bear traps out, and they ended up getting caught in it. And another thing about that window break, which I found out the hard way, the counselors can no longer climb out those windows without getting hurt. They can get out, but it will do damage, and they will get bloody, because I actually get listed as suicide when it was Ken was after me. He came after me up the top window, and all of a sudden he's like, wait, why did you just die? It was because I tried to get out a window that had shards, and I was already down and injured. And so that's another key. So you basically, you know, as Jason, you pretty much is almost always a way to take away the any little advantage that the counselors can have. It's just about using it strategically.
Right. So that's all the tips we have for now. I'm sure the game's going to get better. The developers are working really hard to get the server issues ironed out. And once they get the matchmaking and the server issues done, I'm sure they'll be focusing on content. And they've already said it's the tip of the iceberg. They're going to have more maps, more Jasons, more DLC. So I'm really looking forward to where the game goes from here.
Yeah, and it got, believe it or not, it got that first week when I got it was after that first patch. And Steve and I would try and get into matches. This is before you hit the game. And we'd literally wait 7 minutes before it would match us up. And half the time it would just put us in a room and never go anywhere. So now at least it goes kind of right into matches. Sometimes you may not get any other random players. It may just be the group that you go in there with. But we have a group of 5 and we have a ball just with the 5 of us. I mean, yeah, it's more exciting when there's some people we don't know in there, because especially when we're all counselors. But you know, even with the 5, as long as you go in with a couple of people, it's actually really fun. And I get, half the time I get random invites from people that I don't know. I usually ignore them because I'm usually in a game already. But I know our group is pretty fun to play with because we all kind of know each other's strategies, so it's getting a little more challenging now. But yeah. It's definitely, we have a ball, especially in the chat. Yeah. And on that note, I do want to say, is we're working on something. We're just still doing the testing phases of it using that mixer, where at one point Tim and I will announce through our social media sites that we're going to be playing matches online, and you guys can all witness it by going to the link, and you'll actually get to watch our game live. So, and you'll be able, I think you'll even be able to, you should be able to chat with us and write stuff to us, and, you know, so we'll let you know when that, once we get that set, but that should be in the next couple of weeks. We'll get that going, and especially if we do it in a private match, you'll hear what we're saying too, which
should be really funny.
Yeah, which is really funny, especially with,
a lot of trash talking.
Yeah, it gets pretty fun. So you got that to look forward to.
All right, guys, so we'll wrap it up, and we'll be back next week with a really big episode.
Right. That's not to give you guys any disappointment if you end up not liking it, but this has potential to be one of our best shows coming up, between our guest and just the movie and the topic and the enthusiasm that all of us will share for the film. And Tim's got a couple surprises. I've got a couple surprises. I think it'll be a really, really fun show.
So we'll see you next week.
See you later.